Welcome back, listeners. It's time for another episode on a past moment from history.
I can't wait!
This is a fun one because this past moment from history is all about the California Gold Rush. Cece, have you learned about this in school yet?
No.
That's okay. Here's a quick overview. On January 24th, 1848, gold was discovered at a place called Sutter's Mill in California. This discovery led to millions of dollars of gold being mined and unleashed the largest migration in the United States history, and it drew people from a dozen different countries.
Check this out.
Migration means movement of people or animals from one place to another. So basically what I said before means just that a lot of people moved to California during the gold rush, and that's what caused the migration. I'll explain a little bit more about how the discovery of gold in 1848 and the California Gold Rush caused such a big migration in a little bit.
First things first.
We're going to learn all about past moment from history, the California Gold Rush, and the impact it had in today's episode of Check This Out. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we explore people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that shape the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
The California Gold Rush was a big past moment in the history of the United States. Now, do you know what California's nickname is? Is it A, the Sunshine State, B, the Golden State, C, the Sweetheart State? If you said B, you're right. It's the Golden State. In large part, California is called the Golden State because the gold rush played a big role in how it became a state. Also, the fields of golden poppies, but for our purposes today, we're talking about the gold.
Check this out.
Did you know that the United States and Mexico went to war back in 1846? This was 2 years before gold was discovered in California, and this was known as the Mexican-American War. During the time leading up to the war, California was under the control of the Mexican government. When the U.S. and Mexico went to war in 1846, California's population was really small. There were only about 6,500 Californios, which were people of Spanish or Mexican descent. There were about 700 foreigners who were mostly Americans. There were 150,000 Native Americans whose numbers had been cut in half since the arrival of the Spanish back in the 1700s. So it was around 160,000 people in total.
Why does that matter?
Because by 1849, a few years later, the non-native population of California had grown to almost 100,000 people, and nearly 2/3 of those numbers were Americans.
That's a big number.
On February 2nd of 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. This treaty ended the war between the United States and Mexico. A big part of the treaty gave control of California to the United States. It also gave up the territories of Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. The treaty also meant that Mexico gave up its claims on Texas and recognized the Rio Grande River as America's southern border. Want to know something crazy?
Yes, please.
When the treaty was signed, neither the United States nor Mexico knew that gold had recently been discovered in California.
Wow!
Keep in mind, our past moment from history, the California Gold Rush, was sparked by the discovery of gold nuggets in the Sacramento Valley in early 1848, right around the time of when this treaty was signed. Gold was discovered on January 24th, 1848, by a man named John Marshall. He was a carpenter and he worked as a sawmill operator, and he worked at a place named Sutter's Mill. The mill was owned by a pioneer named John Sutter. During his early morning routine one morning, he was checking the water-powered sawmill, and Marshall spotted a glint of gold beneath the surface. Marshall plucked it from the water, and he recalled, "I reached my hand down and picked it up. It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold." And then Marshall took his discovery to his boss who owned the mill, Sutter.
What an amazing story!
They tried to keep it a secret, but ultimately word got out. Even though people didn't originally believe the newspaper reports on the discovery of gold. But once someone brought evidence of gold into San Francisco, the frenzy over gold began.
My mind is blown.
Here's something even more mind-blowing, Cece. A crazy amount of gold was pulled from the ground over the course of the gold rush. Do you want to hear some of the numbers?
Tell me everything.
In 1849, so a year after the gold was discovered, they found $10 million worth of gold.
But that's not all.
In 1850, they found $41 million worth of gold. In 2005 dollars, that's the equivalent of $971 million. In 1851, they found even more gold. They found $75 million worth of gold.
Whoa, no way.
And in 1852, they found $81 million worth of gold.
That's a big deal.
After that, the gold rush kind of declined until around 1857, when the gold discovery leveled off to around $45 million a year.
How incredible. That's amazing.
The gold rush put San Francisco on the map, and it also played a big role in the founding and growth of Stockton and Sacramento. By mid-June of 1848, a couple months after the gold had been discovered, 3/4 of San Francisco's male population had left the city to go to the foothills in search of gold.
Really?
San Francisco became even more important when the first Transcontinental Railroad, which is a train line that connected the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, had a station established in San Francisco. There was a huge flood of gold seekers that poured into California. And all these people who moved there, they migrated there to live and look for gold. And this was a major factor in California becoming a state in 1850.
Can you explain that to me?
Well, Cece, think of it like this. Remember, the U.S. took control of the territories of New Mexico and Arizona at the same time as California, but they didn't become states until 1912. Neither of them had a gold rush to compete with California. Have you ever heard the term 49ers? California even has a team with this name. Do you know what this refers to?
I don't know.
We talked about this big migration of people moving to California. Well, the largest number of people who traveled to California for the gold rush occurred in 1849. These people were prospectors who sought their fortunes in finding the gold. So they became collectively known as the, you guessed it, 49ers, in reference to the year they arrived in California, which was 1849.
I get that.
Going a little deeper, in 1849, San Francisco's population skyrocketed from 812 people to 20,000 people, all of whom were hoping to find their fortune in gold.
Here's a fun fact.
Miners took out or extracted more than 750,000 pounds of gold during the California gold rush. So think about how much you weigh. Now think about how much of gold they pulled out of the ground. That's a lot of gold. By the end of the 1850s, it was estimated that $550 million worth of gold had been mined, approximately $187 billion in today's dollars.
That's a big number.
There are some other cool things to know about the gold rush. Do you want to hear them?
Like what, Mama?
Well, did you know that California actually did not have the first gold rush in American history?
Who, Mama?
50 years before gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, the first gold rush in American history happened after a 17-pound gold nugget was found in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. For more than 30 years, all the gold coins issued by the U.S. Mint were actually produced using North Carolina gold.
You gotta be joking.
Another cool thing to know is that the California gold rush attracted immigrants from around the world. By 1850, more than 25% of California's population had been born outside of the United States. News of the discovery of gold was slow to reach the east coast of the United States, so many of the first people who migrated to California were immigrants that were arriving from South America and Asia.
That makes a lot of sense.
This next one is my favorite fact. Early sections of San Francisco were built out of ships that were abandoned by prospectors or people who were coming to search for gold. The gold rush has always made me think of the 49ers heading west in covered wagons to strike it rich in California. But a lot of the first prospectors actually arrived by ship. And so within months of all these people coming into the harbor, San Francisco's port was overflowing with boats that had been abandoned because their passengers brought them and then they left to go hunt for gold.
That's unbelievable.
Now, the formerly tiny town of San Francisco was booming. There were so many more people. And so they needed lumber and things to build with. So these ships were dismantled and sold as construction material.
That is cool.
Hundreds of houses, banks, saloons, hotels, even jails were built out of these abandoned ships. Today, more than 150 years after the gold rush, archaeologists still find relics, sometimes even entire ships beneath the streets of San Francisco.
I want to check out more about that.
You should. Now, before we wrap up our episode on the California Gold Rush, you have to know we don't just love talking about past moments from history.
We also love to rhyme.
Here's a little poem to help you remember what you learned about the California Gold Rush. Gold was struck in 1848. This treasure opened California's gates. The people came from all over the world, hoping to make their fortune in gold. San Francisco was the place to be, especially for prospectors trying to be the person who found the next big thing. California's population was booming. The 49ers came and grew the place, turning it into an official state. Sutter's Mill was where the rush began, a gold mine for Californians. Thanks for listening to another episode of Check This Out. Here at the Check This Out podcast, we know there's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming to find accurate sources. As you get older or do projects for school, you'll learn that certain types of website or information sources aren't verified or have evidence and documentation to back this up. On Check This Out, we use verified sources to build the stories you hear about. Our sources for this week's episode are PBS, History.com, the Smithsonian, and National Geographic. Join us next week for another episode featuring a past moment from history.
Thanks for listening. See you next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.